Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today we are joined by the wonderful Laura Fox, who is going to talk to us about loving LinkedIn. So before we get stuck into that, we're just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to come in, take a seat, get comfy. So yes, for those of you who have not joined us before, my name is Simon Batchelor. I'm the co-founder of Better, Bolder, Braver.
And my name is Frances. I was just about to say my maiden name. How funny is that? Frances Halasji, Nee Fogel. And I'm the other co-founder of Better, Bolder, Braver. It's lovely to have you all here.
Excellent. And then in the middle we have Laura as well, who we will get a full introduction from shortly. But before we hear from Laura, I would invite people in the chat to share where they are joining us from today. Just so we get a bit of a roundup of where people are. And there is also a poll in the poll section, which is on the bottom of your screen. There's a poll. Please do vote. Where's your social media happy place? Got one.
I started off with a typo. That's a good start. My fingers are on fire.
If you're live, you're allowed typos. That's
to be
fine.
Here.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Eric, you're in London as well. Didn't know that.
Excellent.
That's so nice.
Green, just by Green Park. Very nice.
Very
I'm in
nice.
grey Brighton today. It is sea mist today. It's just grey and meh.
And Duncan, are you Duncan Ingram? Are you my old Duncan Ingram that I loved and worked with for many years? If you are, put a hello in the chat so I know it's you. I've got a feeling it might be when you said Hertfordshire.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. Lovely to see you, hear you.
Alex, another North Londoner.
This is a North London representing here, isn't it? How wonderful.
I just want to say before we get into it that basically I want to explain how when I first met Laura, I was on a course back in the day and Laura was a guest speaker. And I just completely fell in love with her, and everyone on the call was kind of completely gripped, hanging on her every word. Not to put too much pressure on you, but it's one of those things that I think everybody is really excited to sort of learn a bit more around this subject. And it will be really interesting to know what everyone's social media happy places are, because Simon and I, I'm particularly happy on LinkedIn, so I'm very excited to have Laura here, and I know
we've got 3 votes for LinkedIn so far.
Yeah, unsurprising.
3 votes. I mean, it's unanimous so far.
Without wanting to get too much into the kind of political backdrop or anything like that, we've obviously got the whole Facebook Meta thing going on in the background in the last few weeks as well. So this feels like it's a sort of a pertinent thing to be talking about right now.
4 votes for LinkedIn. 5 votes for LinkedIn. God, I needn't have bothered typing those other channels in. Just to say, it is also fine to click Instagram and Twitter. You're not going to get kicked off the call if that's where your happy place is. If you've come here to learn to love LinkedIn, that's also cool. But also, similarly, if we're already LinkedIn converts, then join the party.
And Alex says he wants 2 votes. LinkedIn is really my least hated. We should have had which is your least hated.
Exactly. Not sure where the barometer is. Love, least hate.
Yeah,
exactly. Maybe we'll take the temperature later on. So, okay, we've got. I like least hated. Yes, exactly.
Kieran's so excited to be here as well that he's also all over the spelling mistakes today for somebody who's normally.
Is he in Laos?
He's
in Laos and he's very heated. Brilliant. Everyone's too excited. Right,
everyone's very excited. Okay, Laura. So why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about you, what it is that you do and what you're sort of working on at the moment.
Okay. Well, it's my absolute pleasure to be here. And Frances, I think it's not that difficult to get excited talking about LinkedIn, I think anyway, because LinkedIn is so amazingly helpful. So what do I do? So I'm a LinkedIn consultant. I work for myself, so it's me, but I partner with lots of other experts in slightly different areas, some of which are also ex-LinkedIn, like I am. And I do kind of 3 main things, really. I help businesses with B2B marketing on LinkedIn. I help individuals within those businesses, or just, completely independent people who are working and want to know how to use LinkedIn better to elevate their personal brand, whether it be for job seeking. So I do a lot of one-to-one work. I work with a lot of very senior leaders who are looking to kind of elevate what they do on LinkedIn. And then the third area that I do is I do a lot of training, which is kind of where we kind of met, I suppose, originally. So I do training, whether it be to sales teams or, again, to upskill people who want to know how to use LinkedIn better, or whether it's people who are job seeking or looking for a career pivot. So I do lots of different types of group training. And what am I working on right now? Oh, lots of things. I'm very lucky. I get to work with such a wide variety of different types of people and company. So at the moment, I'm doing some really lovely work with Unilever and Mattel, the toy company. So I get to talk about Barbie and Fisher Price and Hot Wheels all day, which is great. And I've got some sort of one-to-one sessions this week. So it's a real mixed bag.
And can I ask you if you could just take us back a little bit more and try to, I mean, I always say nobody wakes up and decides that they're going to become someone in marketing. So I don't know if you could say the same thing about being a LinkedIn expert. If you could give us a bit of context as to how that came about.
Yeah, of course. So I spent the first 11 years of my career working in marketing and advertising, working in specialist agencies, which is where I met the lovely Duncan Ingram, because he was working at Sainsbury's at the time, and Sainsbury's was my client. But it was a niche part of that world. So it was helping those, different businesses to promote their employer brand. So I was kind of in the recruitment communications world, and I was a suit, effectively. I was owning those client relationships, helping them to achieve their goals, kind of being that sort of middle person in the agency between client and creative team. And then LinkedIn came along, and they were expanding in London. They had this horrible, dirty office above a rat-infested shop in Oxford Street, which is where I did my first interview. And they were a handful of people that were doing amazing things. But they were looking for somebody like me who had that skill set of knowing how to develop brands, and specifically employer brands, online, because LinkedIn's kind of first big monetized business was what they call talent solutions. So that's where they work with companies in helping them to unlock talent in the workforce online. So having my skill set was good at the time. So I took a jump. It felt like a massive risk at the time, going to this like tech startup and this, really small office above Oxford Street. But my God, it was life-changing, absolutely life-changing. The most unbelievable career experience I've ever had in my life. And I spent 7 years at LinkedIn, seeing the platform grow from, 100,000 to, it's 800 million today, and seeing the businesses change so much, and being part of that journey was just unbelievable. So I did 4 different jobs in my 7 years at LinkedIn. And then in 2018, I'd had my second child, and I felt like I wanted to do something different. I wasn't sure what different was, but actually what different ended up being for me and my family was I moved to Thailand. Wow. And we left London with my husband and my 2 children, who were 1 and 2 at the time. And we went on this wild and crazy adventure to go and spend time in Thailand and travel through Asia. And while I was there, I was like, you know what? It had been an intense 7 years at LinkedIn. It was a lifestyle. It wasn't a job. It was all hours of all the day, and I loved every single minute of it, but there was no cutoff. And I spent, most of my time on planes traveling around Europe and around the world, and I needed to decompress. So I took 6 months off, and then I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And to be honest, people kept asking me for help with LinkedIn because I knew so much about LinkedIn. And so I was like, you know what, there is a business here. And so what I thought I was going to do when I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's make this. Let's see if this is a business. I thought what I would do would be to continue what I'd always been doing and use my knowledge around building employer brands and also helping individuals. I was really, I love helping individual people get the most out of LinkedIn. I love to see those light bulb moments. I love to see when people are looking for work, when they get a job on LinkedIn. So I thought that would be my business. And that's what I did for the first, say, year when I was still traveling. And so I was working every evening. Kids would go to bed. I'd be on at night because 95% of my clients were in the UK. So I'd work in the evening. But actually, more and more and more, what clients were asking me for as time went on was actually around helping their executive team with their personal brands, understanding what good thought leadership content is, working on a content strategy. And it just became much more B2B marketing and that kind of executive presence piece. And so actually, that's what most of my business is today. I don't do that much really around the talent space. I do a bit and I love doing it when it comes in. But I think particularly because of COVID, it's changed a lot because, when people couldn't go out and meet their clients and meet their prospects and meet their people and meet their future talent, and, they had to find a different way to do it. And so I think the pandemic changed the way that companies and individuals are thinking about LinkedIn. And what it did was it just meant that there was a big shift in my business in terms of what people were asking me for. And so what was an idea, well, I didn't even have an idea when I left LinkedIn. What became an idea became a business, and a really solid one.
So if you had to describe LinkedIn, and I'm not putting you on the spot now and saying give me your elevator pitch, but if you had to, for all the things that you think LinkedIn is able to do and for all the people, is there something that springs to mind as being its kind of ultimate strength that you would love for anyone to understand if they had no idea what LinkedIn was? How would you describe that?
A term that I've used a lot recently that I found myself saying is LinkedIn is an absolutely brilliant icebreaker tool. That's what it's really, really good for. It's really good at breaking the ice between you and someone that you want to talk to, whether it be someone that you've known before, that you've maybe lost touch with, a prospect, somebody that you'd like to do business with. It's a really great way of just cutting through and breaking the ice with that person so that you can have some sort of meaningful conversation. And I think that's what's so brilliant about LinkedIn. And when I think about what it boils down to me, that's what it is. We used to have this really cheesy phrase at LinkedIn when we set up our Sales Navigator business, which was the tool that was created to help salespeople, have meaningful conversations with decision makers. We used to say, like, nobody likes it cold, because cold calling is so old hat these days. We don't need to cold call, because if you go on something like LinkedIn, you can learn so much about somebody. Even if they're not very active, you can learn a lot from their LinkedIn profile. You can see where they're based. You can see what they've done before. The bare bones of a profile are more often than not completed. And then for people who are a bit more active, you can see through their activity history, what do they talk about? What do they like? So you should never really have to have a cold conversation with anybody. So I think that for me is the crux of it. I can give you loads of other analogies that I've come up with over time about, I think LinkedIn is also like this business conference that happens 24/7. And you can either choose to go to the conference or not. I love going to conferences because I love to talk to like-minded people. I love to learn. And like, if you imagine that it's exactly like a real life business conference that's happening, think about what you do when you go. You're going to the Excel Centre and it's your industry, your trade show. You can either choose to go up to people and talk to them. You can hang in the background. You can go to breakouts. You can choose to lurk. You can be active. And it's exactly the same on LinkedIn. It's exactly the same. And that conference is happening all the time. Do you want to go? Do you want to go today? Do you want to go tomorrow? Do I want to turn up twice a week? Like, the more you put in, the more you get out, the more you'll learn, the more you'll take from it. So that's kind of how I think about LinkedIn. And I rely on it completely to grow my business, not just because talk about LinkedIn, but in order to manage and grow and nurture my business, I use LinkedIn. I don't have a website. I don't spend a penny in marketing budget. I use LinkedIn.
A couple of things have come up for me in what you just said that I want to make sure I've kind of asked you about before I forget. So the first thing is I think for the reasons that you give, it's therefore all the more disappointing when you do get a cold call through LinkedIn. And actually, even this morning, I got someone writing me a message in LinkedIn saying, I'd like to really help you up the amount of coaches that you speak to every day. You know, use my LinkedIn consultancy service. And I wrote, oh, it's a shame. It looks like you haven't had time to actually familiarise yourself with what it is that I do, what my experience is and what I talk about. So can I direct you here, here and here? And I always take the kind of opportunistic approach to these if I have time, whereas Simon's like, no, just ignore. Whereas I'm like, no, this could be the next amazing member of our community, because, you know, we use the term coach, but somebody may very well think of themselves as a LinkedIn coach. And, you know, what we're all about is trying to help our coaching community to move, as we say, from conversions to conversations, and to just take a few steps back from that sort of slightly panicked like sales vom that results in nothing usually, or maybe 1% out of the like 99% of other people that you've kind of pissed off along the way. You know, for self-preservation's dignity and business sustainability reasons, we just think it's unnecessarily you're just putting yourself out there in a way that's not going to serve many people and is probably not going to serve you. So we very much celebrate what you're saying about how, you know, with a very, very little amount of work via LinkedIn, you can actually learn quite a lot about someone so that you can have a meaningful conversation with them. And it's not just you trying to sell yourself, but rather about trying to understand how a meaningful relationship can grow. So that's something I'd love to hear your thoughts on. And then the second thing is much more briefly around like how, as an, I don't really love the labelling introvert, extrovert, but for someone who's less extrovert and, you know, does rather like to kind of hover in the background, can you talk about how LinkedIn provides opportunities in that regard as well? And that reminds me also to ask you about the learning opportunities within LinkedIn.
So to your first point, I love that term sales bomb. I'm going to remember that one. But it's so true because, you know, like you, when you asked me the question about how did I end up becoming a LinkedIn consultant, I didn't wake up thinking this is what I'm going to do like 15 years ago. But in the same way that no one wakes up in the morning going, oh, I wonder what Laura Fox is doing today. Oh, let's go on LinkedIn and find out what Laura Fox is. No one does that. No one's interested in me. People are interested in themselves. And if I can somehow say something or share something that's vaguely useful to them in what they're doing, people are only interested in their problems. This is just, you know, we try and be as altruistic as we can. But when we wake up in the morning and we're laying in bed at night thinking about what we're going to need to do tomorrow, it's thinking about, right, our mental load, our list of all the things that we've got to do inside or outside of work or our kids or whatever it is. And so therefore, when I go onto LinkedIn, and we could talk about this later, like how often and blah, blah, blah. But when I go onto LinkedIn, I'm trying to do something and share something that is useful to my target audiences. And I don't try to be all things to all people because I can't. So, you know, one of the things I talk about when I'm training around content is actually you might have a lot of professional interests, as me as a person, you and, you know, Simon, we might all have a lot of professional interests, but you have quite a small window of opportunity to influence others through your content, through comments that you make, through posts that you might put in a group that you're in. So I always try to keep it narrow to like a couple of subjects, 2 or 3 subjects, because, and I, you know, those are my kind of 2 or 3 main topics that I'll talk about on LinkedIn. And then that is kind of my strategic goal. I think there's nothing wrong with being strategic on social. Like, let's not beat around the bush. We're here for our end goal, which is to serve ourselves in some way. But if we can do that by helping others, because ultimately we're all here to provide a service in some form or another. So I think it's okay to be strategic. And, you know, my strategic goal, one of my reasons for coming onto LinkedIn is because I want to win new business. So who do I want to win new business from? Who are those clients? And what can I share with them that is in some way going to help them address a problem or fix a problem that they are facing? So that's sort of how I think about that kind of sales role. Like, nobody wants to just be sold to. That is so boring, so dull, and it ultimately only serves your end purpose. So yeah, that's something that I will always seek to avoid as much as possible. And to your second question about being an extrovert, I am more of an extrovert, sure. So it's easier for me, but I think it is easier generally on LinkedIn or on any social, because you can put yourself out there a little bit more. It's easy just to share a reaction. Like, it's okay. From an algorithm point of view, a comment is always better than a reaction, but it's still good to click that like button, click that celebrate button, click that support button on someone's post. So I think you can have a light touch to how you're active on LinkedIn. You can like and comment and react to somebody's post. You can put a comment on there. Yes, look, when we think about social, like, the ultimate nirvana is video these days. Video performs really well on LinkedIn and other social platforms. It's not for everyone, but I do think whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you do kind of need to try and put yourself out your comfort zone a little bit and try and do things like this and record a bit of video, because all the trends, all the online trends are pointing towards video content taking over. So, if you're going to be working for the next 10, 15, 20 years, you're probably going to have to get comfortable with video at some point and talking and doing things like this and recording yourself. So I do think even, if you are an introvert, the more, it's like a muscle, the more you practice, the better than you can become. And you're going to hate it. I hate watching myself back. I will probably never watch this again. I hate the way my voice sounds. I'm very mindful of it. But you just got to do it. And the more you do it, the more relaxed you become. And I think it's okay to, be okay that you sound the way you sound and that you look the way you look. And, nothing's going to change that. So just get on with it.
We like to get people to a place where we call marketing another effing self-growth tool. Because we're constantly inviting people to hold up a mirror to themselves and ask themselves why they want to say this, why they want to do this in this certain way, why they want to speak to this person, why they're struggling with this, that and the other in their marketing. And it's often a sort of microcosm of some bigger picture values, concerns, anxieties. And so we can actually use some of this stuff, i.e. videoing ourselves, and Simon knows how much I absolutely detest doing it as well, to actually sort of just ground ourselves in what's uncomfortable or comfortable and ask some deeper questions, which in the end can be very nourishing. So as well as being able to get yourself out there better so as to sell your stuff more, you may also really benefit from the exercise for yourself.
Yeah, and I can't also...
I was just going to add one quick thought, which was some people find that leap from no video to video quite a big one. So one thing we're sort of suggesting that people try at the moment is making a podcast and then making an audiogram of the podcast, which is a little graphic you can make, which is essentially like a graphic of your voice. And it's sort of a halfway house between needing to get on video and getting used to articulating yourself and editing what you say. And we've been posting a mixture of audiogram clips of talks like this and videos. And just anecdotally, we're finding that the audiograms do as well as the faces, as long as you sort of pepper it around. So I think for a lot of people, if it's not absolutely perfect, the video you end up with, it doesn't mean you've got to throw it in the bin. You could take the audio of that and put it into like Descript, which is the program we recommend everybody uses because it's brilliant. That makes lovely little audiograms and it's super easy to do. So if anybody's listening and thinking, oh, I'm not quite ready to take that plunge and every time do a video, then there is that little stepping stone in the middle. But I'd certainly agree with what you were saying about, not maybe liking how your voice sounds or, thinking, oh, I look a bit strange and things like that. And I think for me, it took years of editing my own voice to get used to it, because when I first started listening to my own voice, I was just like, oh, it sounds really weird, because you don't hear it from within inside your own head, do you? It just sounds very, very odd. But actually, after a while, I find you do just get a bit numb to it and don't even realise. And now I can even tell if I've got a cold or a sore throat or whatever. I can tell if I'm tired, and when I'm editing stuff, I'll be like, oh, you sound really tired, actually. I think you should probably do that again. So you do sort of pick it up after a long time of doing it. But I completely see what you mean. It is definitely a muscle that if you stretch it, it works. It works a lot easier. So we've got a question from Kieran. So should we let's have a look at that. So Kieran says, for many years I only added people that I knew and had met in person. These days there seems to be a move away from this, partly due to COVID perhaps. Would love to know and hear your thoughts on that. So
great question. So I think my best practice advice is still to add people that either you know that you've met in a meeting or you've been to a networking event through a community like this, or where you can see some sort of mutual value either now or in the future. So, if there is some reason why you think you might be able to help this person down the line, or vice versa, that you think there's mutual gain there, then sure. But then in that case, what I would do is I'd probably do a couple of things. Number one, if there's someone that you've seen that you want to engage with their content first. So, you can get on people's radar without going straight in for the connection request. So you can read their content, make a comment, like something. So they see your name before you're actually sending out that connection request. And you can do that a couple of times. So then when they do get that connection request, it's not such a cold approach. And then the other thing is, of course, when you are actually adding a connection, always add a note. So even if you're going to talk to this person at some point, or you're going to send them a message, I think, like that example of the real life conference, you wouldn't go up to somebody and just shake their hand and walk off without saying anything, which to me is what you're doing when you're sending a connection request without a note attached. It's just like, do I know you? Should we? Why? So I think if you can engage first to kind of break that ice a little bit, and then send. So I think I wouldn't still want to connect with a complete stranger unless I saw some reason why we might be able to help each other. The other thing as well is that if you are adding people that you don't know, that perhaps are out of your industry sector, it's going to start to dilute the experience you have on your newsfeed, because you're going to start to get content from them and potentially their network on your newsfeed, which then, I get this all the time. People say, oh, well, the stuff on my newsfeed isn't relevant. It's just not helpful to me. And then they have people have a negative experience of what LinkedIn can do for them and how useful it is. But at the end of the day, what you put in is what you get out. So if you're adding lots of people, so give you an example, I might do training sessions within the finance sector. I do that. And so I've got lots of bankers and investment bankers and VC people coming to sessions with me. And a lot of them might want to connect with me afterwards. But actually, if I connect with all of these people, then all of this kind of content, which really I'm not that interested in professionally, is going to come on my newsfeed. And so what I suggest to people is, and I'm in creator mode now, is follow me. You don't have to be in creator mode, but you can set follow as the primary action on your profile rather than connect. And I'll just say, follow me. Because if they're interested in my content, great, but I'm not so interested necessarily in theirs.
And
so
can I ask you a technical question on that? Because somebody asked somewhere recently, does creator mode happen by default, or do you have to actively choose it? Because I feel like somebody might have actively chosen it recently, thinking that I wonder if it might have been someone who was an introvert and was feeling a bit overwhelmed about the amount of contact requests or something like that. But I think it's a really interesting point around that, because you have to really want to not be connecting with people, or for people to not invite you to connect, to go into creator mode, don't you? Like,
I think unless you're a really if you're planning to become a more prolific content creator, or you are one already, or perhaps you're in my situation where you're doing lots of training sessions, so you're meeting lots of people across a wide group of industries and sectors, then I would probably stick with Connect. People are very obsessed with having a following these days, but remember that LinkedIn is, even though we group it together in social, for me, its true value and its true power is in the fact that it is a professional networking site. It's a networking site. And so whilst, it's great to have this big following, it's also useful to have contacts. That's why we're here. So I'm absolutely not saying, I do not think it's right for everyone to go into creator mode or to have follow as your primary action. It depends on what you are coming to LinkedIn to do. And I think actually for most of the people probably on this call, It could be just stick with the normal connection kind of approach as your kind of primary contact point.
I love what you've just done there, because you've helped to bring to the surface for me why it is that LinkedIn is the platform of choice for me. Because I do think sometimes, why? Like, it's not as if, is it the interface? Is there something about, why am I much happier here than I am even on Instagram, which looks really pretty and is easy to look at on the loo and all the rest of it? I think it's because I couldn't give a shit about how many people are following me or whatever, but I'm absolutely obsessed with, because I'm an extrovert as well, connections, the conversation, cheerleading. I get really turned on when I can curate about 6 things that I've heard recently into one post and cheerlead lots of different people all at the same time. And I feel like LinkedIn lends itself really well to that sort of inclination. And back in the day, I loved being at the corporate events and, like you say, the conferences, and flitting about, and you must meet this person, and I must just pop into that seminar. And so I can, you can really feel how for some people that way inclined, LinkedIn is a really happy place. So
totally. And I'm not on, I have a Facebook profile and I use it to mostly like my husband's business posts, but I don't feel comfortable putting pictures of my kids up, and I don't really want people to know where I'm going on my holiday, because that's why, I don't know, I'm not big into that. But as I'm so comfortable on LinkedIn for all the reasons that you said, plus I'm learning so much. I use it as a place to keep my professional knowledge up to date. It is connecting the world's professionals. So all of the brightest minds when it comes to what I'm interested in, which is employer brands, personal brands, B2B marketing, they're all on LinkedIn and they're all sharing great content.
Let's talk about the learning, because we asked you about that. And let's also, I want to also just say something else that you said before, just the thought came to mind that I find it also it cuts through the barriers. So, for example, Simon and I use Mighty Networks as our platform, and Simon did a lot of extensive research into which platform we might like to build Better World of Braver on, and we settled on Mighty Networks, and we were both familiar with it. And the founder, Gina, is someone who I was very, very quickly able to connect with on LinkedIn. And there was no us and them, or she's really important and I'm just a tiny, tiny person in the UK. And testament to her, she isn't an idiot who thinks she's more important than everyone else, and is extremely generous in many ways. And, when I dropped her a line on LinkedIn, or I think invited her, I think I probably did do what you think we're supposed to do, which is that I tagged her in a comment or, something, and then connect with her and dropped her a line. And the other thing I do is I find myself writing these jolly personal notes to people I've never met before about something, and I think I dropped her a line and was like, yay, hurrah, like, oh, loving it, da, 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 da. And she really quickly was like, brilliant, and just those connections that you can make with people who are, these almighty powerful founders of things. And like,
I think it's so nice. True. I think I've said that for years on LinkedIn. When I worked at LinkedIn and I was going out to very large companies, I used to say to them, and I absolutely believe this is true for companies large and small, and for senior versus not so senior people, whether you're 25 years in your business or you're new, it's a level playing field. Now, it gives you the same access to people, to companies, to ideas as everybody else. So I think that is the beauty of LinkedIn. I was looking at a profile. I'm doing some preparation for some working with some executive leaders within a big company, and I was looking at the profile of Bernard Looney, who's the BP CEO, and he's so personal. He's one of my heroes on LinkedIn. Like, if you want to look at someone who's very senior and doing it right, it's him. And he's just so personal, so authentic. Like, I've never met him, but I feel like I know him. He's added this little line to his LinkedIn profile, which I'm sure one of his people has probably done, which says something along the lines of, I do have people helping me with my LinkedIn profile, but I do try to read everything that is written to me. And I just love that level of honesty and access that he gives you. And I do agree with you. That's one of the best things about LinkedIn. It doesn't matter who you are.
I want to check in, because Boris Johnson posted something And I was like, oh, let's see what happens here. And of course, like, so much banter. You know, someone in our community is like super hot on climate change and like working magic from the inside out. They're not here, Gary, but you know, I tagged Gary in a comment and was like, is there anything you'd like to share with Boris here? And, you know, the question will be, what does Boris do with that? You know, it's one thing showing up and, you know, posting away, but it's another thing, as you say, being really transparent and being like, yep, someone's helped me, or like, oh God, all this noise now, what? You know, and there's something about that honesty and authenticity that's absolutely lovely and makes you want to actually engage with people a lot more than if it's just this shiny thing that someone's people have like
exactly, because it's very transparent. When it is just this shiny thing and it's people's people, then it is really obvious. And you know, I think just having it as a platform for press releases and company news is just boring. That's not what people want these days, especially since the pandemic. We are looking for a much more real, authentic engagement.
And before we go on to the learning, because I knew this was going to happen, I was going to be like, and this. But also, you've touched on it, but, you know, the niching thing, trying to work out who you're trying to talk to and why it's important to do that for so many reasons. But, you know, what you were saying before about curating and Simon talks about this a lot as well and has done on a workshop recently, but how to curate the people that are that you're following or that you want to follow you and all the rest of it, so that your newsfeed is actually relevant. But also so that the right people, according to who you want to surround yourself with, see you and are invited to comment, and so that you can engage with their content as well. Could you just, maybe in context of the learning thing, I don't know how you'd link those two things, but can you talk to that as well?
Well, it was funny because before we actually went live on this broadcast, I had a quick chat with Simon and I was like, can you just tell me what your better, bolder, braver position is on niching, because I'm all about niching. Are you all about niching? Because I don't want to counter what you say. And he's like, no, we're all about niching.
Ethical marketing. Niching, ethical marketing.
Okay, good.
And also like another fucking self-growth tool. That's my other thing. It's like, how is this therapy? That's my other thing. Yes.
No, I think that's the thing. I think LinkedIn might not be everything you've ever needed for every part of your business and for your personal growth and everything. You know, it might be asking too much. You know, you might have lots of different business interests as well. You might do your coaching thing, but actually you do other things as well. Like if you think about me, my 90% of what I do is my LinkedIn consulting. I work with a charity, which I absolutely love, a leadership development charity, which is my passion project, the growth project. And that's kind of it. But I also, you know, that adds up to more than 100%. But I, you know, completely separate to that, I kind of help and advise on my husband's businesses. So I can't talk about all of those things on LinkedIn because it is going to completely confuse my audience. So I have to let something go. So occasionally you might see me talk about my husband's businesses, and you'll see me wearing these beautiful glasses, which is his bag. And I'd love to use LinkedIn to help promote that more, but actually it's going to dilute the kind of key strategic reason why I come to LinkedIn, which is to share the LinkedIn love, ultimately to, you know, help grow my business and, you know, help my personal brand stand out. So I think that it is important to try and think. And the hardest thing is when I work with people who don't know who their audience is, because that's when you're like, okay, it's very hard to be everything to all people. And then if you don't know who you're trying to talk to, then how the heck is anyone else going to really understand what you're all about? And I think that if there are two different things you're into, then that's okay. There are places on the profile you can describe it, you can use your words through your content, but if it's beyond that, then it's challenging. So I think be as specific as you can.
I think also with us, you know, I think the thing that, you know, obviously we look after and try to help and love coaches. And the thing that we see in that community, in our community, is a sort of misunderstanding about the whole concept of what niching actually means. And people quite quickly go to describing how they like their method and their process as opposed to their audience when they think about niching, and they talk about how their particular approach might be sort of quite creative. But I think the problem still is, if you don't actually know who you're trying to bring that process and that method to, then you can be as unique as you like, but you might not be getting people's attention at the right step. And Simon and I talk about levels of consciousness in what we call the coach's marketing journey. And we talk about the first stage as being problem unaware, the next stage is problem aware, then there's solution unaware, then solution aware, and then most aware. And, you know, it's very difficult and people don't know the problem. The word problem is problematic, and what we mean is opportunity for change, perhaps. But, you know, and people are not conscious of an opportunity that they might have within them for change. And you're just talking to them about your method, and there's nothing about what you're saying that is of particular subjective relevance that might resonate with them. Then, like you say, you're just firing into the dark and, you know, going to get lost in a sea. And what we are mindful of, and actually a good point that we were chatting about before we came live, was everyone here, the elephant in the room is everyone here is going to be wanting to know from you what the algorithms are doing in the background, and like, where lies the magic, and can you please dispel the myth? And the point that you made before we came on, which is a really important one to air, is that does it really matter? I think is the question in response to that. Like, why do you need to know what the myths are and the magic and all the rest of it? Like, is that the point? Is the point to understand and try and navigate and like outsmart the algorithm robot, or is it to be more self-aware and more directive in what you're trying to say? Sorry, that was a bit of a rant.
No, so many good points touched on there. I mean, I think that going, you know, to your point about niching, it's really just boils it down to what do you want to be known for. It doesn't matter what your method is. It's that classic Simon Sinek kind of golden circle theory of what, how, you know, how, why, what. It doesn't, you know, it's not the mechanics of what you deliver and how you deliver it, but it's the why. And so for me, it's like, what do I want to be known for? What are my strengths? And these are the ones that I want to put out into the world, because that's where I might attract people to come and engage with me. And then in terms of the algorithm, look, it's LinkedIn secret sauce. Every website has its algorithm. You know, what I will tell you from everything I know, and, you know, LinkedIn rewrote its algorithm about a year and a half, 2 years ago, that there are kind of two key things that you need to be mindful of: quality and consistency. You know, yes, people do their own independent studies that are not validated by LinkedIn, and they get really in the weeds of you need to have this many hashtags, and you know, commenting is better than liking, and this video should be this many seconds long. And there are loads of reports like that. You can Google them. There are some people that do that stuff really, really well, and they have a good sort of set of data set. And, you know, I'm very happy to share a link to one which I think is probably quite good. But to be honest, people get so hung up in that detail. If you just focus on quality and consistency, so when you are engaging, when you are putting out comments or content, whether it be short form posts, long form posts, when you're engaging with someone, always make sure that it's quality, because the more that people engage with it, those microsecond behaviors that people do where they hover on the more button, or they press the like button, or they read more, or they share it, or they, whatever it is, those are the data points that are really going to tell the system this is good or not. And then on the consistency point, it's about showing up. So don't come onto LinkedIn once a month and think, oh, that'll do, people will notice me. It won't. We know that the algorithm doesn't work like that. So we know that we need people. Your network wants you to show up, and the algorithm wants you to show up. So you need to be coming on a couple of times a week. You know, and that is really going to help in terms of showing, you know, that very busy newsfeed. How do I see your post versus someone else's? LinkedIn will positively mark your content if you're more consistent, if it's good quality content. So that's what I would think about with the algorithm. Don't get hung up on all the millions of micro kind of details, and also don't get hung up if a particular post isn't seen to do well. Like, we have these vanity metrics that we get really hung up about. Oh, this post only got this many views and this many likes, and you know what, keep going. It's about not giving up. You know, I say to people all the time, LinkedIn isn't a silver bullet. If you're new to it, or maybe you're stepping up your level of activity on there, it takes time. You know, I've got to a point where I've had my business now for 3 years or something, where I get all inbound kind of activity, all inbound referrals. I don't have to do any outbound, anything at all, where I have done a year and a half, you know, 2 years ago. because it's just about showing up on a regular basis, and don't be disheartened if one post or a series of posts isn't deemed to do really well. Learn from it.
I was going to say, there's a learning of, I'm interested in just drilling down on the consistency thing, because you're talking to consistency from a time perspective, but what I'm also thinking about is consistency from a messaging point of view. And I'm wondering if what you're saying is not just algorithm aside. I'm thinking, for the sake of people getting to know you, that thing of, and Simon, what is it that you say, that you need to have seen something 7 times for people to start really understanding what it is that you're saying? So there's that, but then there's also, if you keep showing up, you get to know what you think. Particularly for those of us who are extrovert, someone's at the door. For those of us who are extroverts, I get what I'm trying to say from saying it in conversation with someone, and I have the same experience when I'm posting stuff. I find when I'm drafting a post, because I've thought, what a gorgeous way in which I can link these 6 different things that I've heard recently together. The way in which I lace them together is something that I then, that tells me about my own position on something. So by showing up consistently in saying stuff, you will start seeing in yourself what it is that you actually say, and show your workings out loud, which is something that we also really celebrate.
Yeah.
The interesting thing though is, what do you do when you get tumbleweed, aside from feel really sorry for yourself? Do you read into that this particular thing is not very interesting to people, or there's an algorithmic reason why not many people have seen that? That's the bit that I find sometimes quite interesting. I'd like
it is good to reflect and learn, and to go back and see, did I not tag anyone? The obvious, to me, what are the obvious things? Did I not tag someone? Did I not mention, did I put a link to something? Did I not put the right hashtags? Did I post at the wrong time of day? Did I, forget and put that post out at 3:00 on a Friday? Well, that was silly, because no one, that is not an optimal time to be posting on LinkedIn. So I'll kind of do a sense check of the obvious. Then I'll look at the content and go, you know what? That was a bit self-serving, or that wasn't really useful to my audience, or, just kind of go through that mental checkbox. And it might be that it just didn't land. And so maybe next time try doing it in a different way. And I think if you're getting tumbleweed over the course of 6 months, then you can take a deeper look and think, okay, this is not happening for me. Maybe what I'm actually doing is not the right thing. But I think generally I don't come across that very often, with people that have tumbleweed for months on end.
And like you say, we're human and we kind of work it out, or we're not gluttons for punishment and don't keep doing it and self-flagellating. But also, I think you've touched on so many brilliant technical things, and then there's also the kind of, what is the ideal length of a post? What's the reality about how long people are going to sit there when it comes onto their feed and go, all right, yeah, I'll spend 3 or 5 or probably not 25 minutes reading something. Although I think it actually caps it on LinkedIn in the nicest possible way, says you've talked too much, stop, and it's like, yeah, okay. But then there's, I think
they've just
articles.
Changed it, haven't they? So it's now 3,000 characters, but it was a mind-boggling 900 for a period. It was really short, and they didn't tell anybody they did it. It just, you'd go in, you'd be like, I've run out of characters,
finished.
what? And
but
then they put it back.
People get that question a lot, like, what's the maximum character length for a post, and what's the max? And I always think that you shouldn't be using the maximum character length for a post or an article anyway, because it's way too long. So don't worry about it. People get worried about things that they really don't need to worry about.
I think also, just to loop back to something you were saying about, if you do get sort of a tumbleweed, or a post doesn't land in the way you wanted to, I think one thing that people shouldn't be afraid of is to just rewrite it. To just take that same idea, take the same concept, and just try writing it in a different way, because people only see every other, 1 in 5, we can come up with statistics all day long of how much or how little content people see. But if something doesn't land, that's just an opportunity to have another go at rephrasing it, rewriting it, flipping the angle, turn it on its head, and just experiment with it. Something we always say when people are starting to write content is that the first 50 bits of content they make are warm-up. So that's you just warming up. Very few people are going to see that in the grand scale of things. But by the time you get to 50 bits of content, you'll be so used to doing it you will have stopped counting, and B, you'll just be enjoying making it. So if you aim for that sort of, well, we're just getting, just seeing what works, seeing what lands. And I think there's a lot of fun to be had with that process.
I was just going to say that, with
of
your polls, all sorts of fun stuff you can do on LinkedIn where you're actually saying, I don't know the answers, I'm really interested in other people's thoughts on it. Here's a poll. It's like, oh, there's an invitation to engage. Okay, now I really understand what it is that you want.
I always say to people as well, like, be good LinkedIn citizens. When people are putting out a poll, it's because they're inviting your input. And when you put out a poll, you're going to want to invite their input. So be good LinkedIn citizens. Take that 30 seconds to read, consider, respond, because that's why they're doing it. Just in the same way you do. So I always encourage people to be good LinkedIn citizens, particularly when it's, you're with your community, people that you want to engage with, and if you want people you want to kind of break the ice with. It's a good help.
Can you talk about cheerleading a bit? Because I think the other confusion in the coaching community is obviously recently there's been an absolute boom in the amount of people who are qualifying, and I use the term loosely and creatively because some people don't buy into the more conventional I've got a piece of paper school of thought, but people becoming coaches. There's many more of them, and a lot of people seem to think that a great thing to do in the first instance is to follow lots of other coaches, and I can understand why, because they want to see what other people are doing in the space, and I think there's lots to be said for market research. But then it feels like there's a tipping point that speaks to what you were saying before about almost kind of flooding your feed with stuff that is not only not your target audience, but arguably quite intimidating, and can just render you a bit numb because you don't quite know who you want to be, or I don't know if you maybe could speak to what it is to follow other people in your own industry as maybe kind of
I mean, we've all been there and we've all done it. And, I am not the only LinkedIn consultant in this world. I'm one of the few who's actually worked at LinkedIn, but there's other people who've got a whole different thing, a whole different style, a whole different way. And that's great, because there's enough clients out there for everybody. And my style might resonate with some and theirs might resonate with others. So I think that it's okay to follow. I mean, this isn't any particular LinkedIn learning. This is just what I felt from somebody that's worked as an independent consultant. I think it's okay to follow other people to the point where you're not comparing yourself to them, and you're kind of, doing yourself a disservice by following those people and becoming negatively affected by their content because you think they're doing so much better than you and they're doing this live and you're not doing a live, and they're doing a podcast and you're not doing a podcast. So I think that, I think it's a good thing until the point where you're not beating yourself up over the competition. But I think it's good, I think it's good initially to get a barometer on what's happening in your space, because then it might inspire you to do things slightly differently. And when it comes to content, some people just naturally align to a blog type of post. Some people naturally align to video because they love making videos. So it's about finding what you like, and more often than not, it's about what you interact with as well. Like, I love listening to podcasts, so I tend to just listen to more podcasts. So I've thought about making a podcast because that's the format I like. I'm not so much of a video watcher, so I haven't, it's not something that I've necessarily spent. I know that I should do it. So I think it's a good thing. It's all out there for the, for viewing. So follow until the point where it's not really helping you. But I think with regard to the gratitude, I think, again, as a pandemic trend, I think the uptick in sort of gratitude or celebration posts is quite noticeable. And I think that's a great thing. I get this question a lot when I'm doing workshops now. I normally get it at least once every session. Is LinkedIn becoming like Facebook? And it's an interesting debate that we could have for ages. But I think that as there's so much fusion between work and home now, and people are still working at home, even if they are going into an office or, workplace setting, that I think there is a much more of a bridging the gap between what they might post, whether it be thanking someone for something or celebrating someone for something else. But I think that's definitely okay on LinkedIn, and I'm all for it, and the more the better.
we've got, like, I'm just so mindful of time. And every time you open your mouth, I'm like, 45 other questions. But can you just really quickly speak a little bit to LinkedIn ads? Is it worth it? LinkedIn groups, is it helpful when you're thinking about building a community? It's like all the things.
Okay, let's do groups real quick. Groups are hard. You have to, if you're going to do a group, okay, group functionality is quite limited right now. As in actually what you can do with the group, other than posting comments, there's not a lot you can do. But watch this space. LinkedIn say there's more coming down the pipe for groups. It's not something they've really invested in for the last few years, but apparently that's all about to change. So I'd say right now, only invest your time and energy in a group if you're really going to be proactive. And that's the same on a group on Facebook, anywhere that you have a group. It just requires a lot of input to get traction and get that conversation going. So same goes for LinkedIn. I think the LinkedIn challenge is that the functionality is a bit more limited. With regards to ads are brilliant if you've done all the foundational work. So, don't start investing money and time and energy and resource into ads if your organic game is not on point. If you haven't got the best profile you can have, if you haven't got an organic content strategy, if you're not doing everything you can to leverage LinkedIn for free, because ads are not cheap and they can suck your budget really, really quickly. And, I don't do a lot of ads work for private individuals or very small companies because it takes time to build awareness. It takes time to learn from the process of what your audience are engaging with. And so ads are not for everyone.
Premium?
Can be very helpful if you're strategic in how you're going to use it. So when you turn on premium, stuff doesn't happen to you. It doesn't give you, you need to be strategic in terms of how you're going to use it. So what I would say was, if you're going to turn premium on, first of all, you can get it free for a month if you've never used it before. So try it, but have a plan as to what you're going to do with the premium. So identify people that you want to engage with, because one of the big plus points of premium is that you can send an email to someone you're not connected to. So you can circumnavigate that process of landing a message in someone's inbox without being connected. Who are these people going to be? Why are you sending them a message? Have you engaged with their content first? Have you tried to break the ice first? Is it going to feel like a cold sales message? So you need to do all of that work beforehand before you turn it on. But it does give you access to LinkedIn Learning, which is brilliant as part of premium. I love it. My husband taught himself to code using LinkedIn Learning because he got sick of paying web developers. You get more visibility on things like who's looked at your profile. If you're job seeking, it gives you more visibility around jobs. So it does have lots of nice benefits, but it depends what you're going to use it for.
Yeah.
It doesn't put your content higher up the newsfeed. It doesn't prioritize you, because that is so against what
and that's
LinkedIn's
what I think
all
a lot of people think it might do.
No,
so that's
absolutely
great that you said
not.
that.
Absolutely not. LinkedIn is a members first platform, and just somebody paying for something doesn't mean that you get greater access. No.
That's really good to clarify. Simon, any further final points, and also any questions? Because it's...
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up there.
Laura's got a thing she has to do.
Yeah.
Well, I hear it cuts off in 1 minute.
Well,
no, it won't cut off.
Okay.
It will just be that when it cuts off, it will cut off. But you
I'm
have
going to post
thing, so...
your LinkedIn profile, if that's all right, so people can follow you, Laura.
Yeah, please do. Follow me, contact me.
Laura a follow, and yes, I'm sure there'll be lots of great content that will inspire your feed rather than fill your feed up. But I think everybody looking at the comments and the questions has learnt a lot, and I've certainly taken away a lot from this conversation. It's been really good, and it's inspired me to go and kind of do a few more different style posts on LinkedIn, so that's really good. But yeah, thank you very much for sharing all of that with us, Laura. It's been really good. If you are watching this on repeat and you'd like to watch more of these conversations, then you can do so by hitting the icon in the corner, and then you can see all the other events that we've got coming up and the conversations. You can also watch the replay of this event if you want to recap on some of those points. And if you'd like to join the conversation we're going to have after the event, then you can try out the community as well. Better, Bolder, Braver. There's a link at the bottom of that that you can click on to get a free trial. So do that now. So thank you everybody for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you
See
so
you
much
next
for
time.
having me.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.